Hi, everybody. Welcome back again. And today is a big day, January the 6th, the date that will live in infamy. But anyway, I'm Louise Edington, the Cosmic Owl of Cosmic Owl Astrology. And very quickly today, my quantum astrology gathering emails started going out. So if you didn't enter your name and email to get all these wonderful astrology interviews in your inbox, you can still do it. And also, I would like to mention my Venus retrograde heroine's journey class, which is starting on February the 25th, but the early bird price ends on January the 10th, just 4 days, when she's at her maximum elongation. So before I dive into a couple of bits of news that I want to talk about, Kathy, you tell everybody about you.
Hi, Kathy Biehl here. My YouTube channel is Professional Aquarian. My website is empowermentunlimited.net, where I have weekly, new, full moon forecasts, monthly forecasts, a bunch of stuff in the shop, lots of guided visualizations, etc. I have a Patreon where I have a monthly Ask Me Almost Anything. It's a nice place to just kind of hang out. Patreon.com/Kathy Biehl. And this week, in addition to being one of the people who was interviewed by Louise for her quantum astrology gathering, I'm talking about connecting the dots from event to event and tracking a storyline. I'm also, along with Donna Woodwell, having our annual Write Your Story for the Year workshop on Wednesday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It's recorded. If you can't attend, you get the recording regardless. There's a workbook. There's a follow-up session with question and answers. It's only $27, and it's a way to actually map out where the big astrological activity is happening in your chart and to give you journal prompts for figuring out what you might do with it. It's still possible to get in on that. If you go to Magic,
And I'll be there.
Louise is taking part. Yay! And I'm in the Venus retrograde class, so we support each other. We learn from each other. So anyway, the link will be below for that, and there's still time to get in.
Yeah,
Andy, a happy boy. Andy's smiling.
And Andy's just like, I'm just chill. I'm not offering all these things.
I do nothing basically, but I do show up. I will say for myself, I've had 3 books that I wrote back at like the beginning of time. They've all been bestsellers on Amazon the past 30 days, which is kind of crazy. My website is andrew-brewer.com. I have exactly 0 upcoming, but I am hanging out with 2 magical astrologers. Most of the trouble that I cause online is on Facebook at facebook.com, Andrew Bassano Brewer. But again, my website, I'm still doing readings, andrew-brewer.com. Happy 2025. This is my last month in my 60s. Oh my God, I'll be 70 years old a month from today. So, hi, and happy 2025. That's all I have.
Oh, well, we have a lot to talk about. But before we look at the charts and things, I want to mention Jessica Denson on YouTube. She she used to be with Midas Touch, and she left Midas Touch because she wasn't allowed to say that something's not right about this election. Anyway, she did a live stream last night that you can find on her channel, interviewing a guy who has been really, not just him alone, but has been deeply analyzing the data that's publicly available to download. It's nothing kind of secretive here. All of this you can find yourself, but he's been analyzing it, and he talks about, well, I'm not going to go into all the details, you'll have to go and watch, but basically it shows credible evidence of manipulation of the votes at the tabulation level in many places, and also suggests that they tried it in 2020 as well, which kind of figures to me because of all this gaslighting about stolen elections that we've had for the whole last 4 years. Anyway, and also the National Archives site. So after the election, the Electoral College process is I'm not going to go through all the dates. You can go and look it up yourself. But the governors and that sign off these certificates of ascertainment. And all of those are in the National Archives site. But then there's a certificate of vote after the Electoral College meet to vote on to certify the votes for the state. 21 states have those certificates of votes missing. We don't know why. We don't know, it's been suggested that the Electoral College people didn't sign them. I don't think we have any evidence of that. They're just not there. We don't know why. So I'm not going to theorize about why they're not there, but it's very fishy. And also the site is not opening for many people today. So you can go and Google it yourself if you want, National Archives or www.archives.gov. I can't open the site. Andy could. It's all very strange today. But anyway, anybody want to catch up on any other news?
I'd like to say two things. The first is at the Mars-Pluto opposition was exact on Friday. That's we've talked about that a whole lot. And Biden issued executive orders changing the chain of command in a whole series of critical agencies, setting up who's in charge if there isn't, for example, an attorney general in place. The Office of Management and Budget was also part of it.
And the DOJ, wasn't it?
And the Attorney General, the DOJ, and actually who specifically which particular offices step in, and
they're all on the White House's website. So
right.
People can go and look at these things. They don't have to go. Yeah.
And that is action that has been taken. And there's one thing I want to address. We get comments intermittently about, but nothing's happening, or you said there was going to be a disclosure, or you said there was going to be an announcement. We're talking about astrological influences and the energies that they carry, and then we show you specific events that played out the energies. I understand that there is tremendous investment in one particular outcome. And this coming weekend does have a lot of aspects that support what we've been hoping for coming out of left field. But I encourage you to just hang loose and look at the energies that we're explaining, and then look for evidence of how those are playing out, rather than putting your preconception expectation of, oh my God, I want it to be this. Well, maybe it'll be adjacent to this. Maybe what you'll see is a lead up to, or a breadcrumb, or a hint of.
And I just wanted to add to that. Pluto is in Aquarius, and Aquarius is really the people. And the moon, we talk about the moon a lot as well. A lot of what's being revealed is coming from the people, So, yeah, release your expectations of exactly what that looks like. So,
yeah, there's always an interconnectedness to things. And I think you have to look at the energetic patterns. I mean, a lot of the things that we talked about from November on have already happened. And if they happen, I mean, you have to look at the way that you make predictions about the future is really to understand the conditions that are influencing the present and what are the historical trends behind them. So I take a little bit different, approach into how we look at things. And to me, a lot of the things that I thought would have to come together in order for this transformation to take place are already happening. They've already happened, especially in the EU with Syria. So you have to look at multiplicity of things. And just because we don't see overt signs of something taking place does not mean that action has not been initiated. And the astrological triggers have not actually helped initiate those things. So there are energetic impulses, and they reveal themselves in different, a multiplicity of ways. I think it's really kind of remarkable how closely events have unfolded relative to what the three of us were talking about 2 months ago. And when we brought these things up, most people kind of side-eyed us like, well, that's not likely. but it is likely. For me, historically, I'm not great at saying something's going to happen on Tuesday or this is a week from tomorrow, but I'm really pretty good at looking at trends. And those trends have a power. And so if you look at that and don't fixate so much on specific events, but on the tidal wave that's pushing events forward, I think you hopefully will be a little more optimistic. And I think that things really are kind of unfolding in a way very similar to what I thought they would. And to me, that makes me very optimistic as a dude that's very much anti-Trump in every way possible and anti-MAGA in every way possible. I feel incredibly empowered by all of it, and I still think the good things are on the horizon. So don't give up yet. That's what I'm trying to say.
But I think we have to remember though that this has been in their plans and things for a long time.
For sure.
It's been building. And one thing that was interesting about Jessica Denson's video is that the data showed this path that's called the Russian tail, right? They're using techniques of manipulation that Russia has used in their elections and other elections, and it's specifically called that. So it's big, and I've long said it's beyond a recount. People are going, oh, we should have had a paper recount. It's beyond that. It's way bigger, and I think they used multiple ways of manipulating, to be quite honest. So just go and watch Jessica Denson's video. That really kind of gives you some idea, because they even talked about the people whose mail-in ballots never got counted. Well, maybe they did something to those ballots and some got sent to the wrong places. Multiple, that's very Aquarian too. So many pieces. It's like, anyway, we're just trying to make sense of it. But back to today. Today is a big day, right? Shall we go to that chart?
Please.
Yeah, this chart's crazy. I love this.
So this session of joint Congress, where both both houses meet, and the vice president is scheduled to certify the vote, begins at 1 p.m. Eastern on January the 6th. And the chart is completely wild to my mind. It's like we've got this Mars-Pluto opposition right on the midheaven and the IC at 27 degrees, which is a ping, ping, ping degree for me. Anyway, and we've just had the second exact opposition of Mars-Pluto, and Mars is now back at the position it was at, the degree it was at just before the election. And when everything just changed and we all woke up going, no, this is not right. So anyway, there's lots more to say. I love that Uranus is in the first house, though, I have to say that. And I love that the Sun and Pallas Athena, I had to leave that asteroid in, are together in the 9th house of truth, justice, the courts, and in Capricorn, which is the rules. So I'm sure we'll come back to all kinds of things. Cassie, I know you wanted to.
Mars, Pluto. Okay, so Mars's military men, attack, fighting for, and opposite the god of death and rebirth, big power, things having to do with technology. Mars and Pluto had their first opposition on November 3rd when Mars was at 29 Cancer. So Mars is now triggering what happened on November 3rd. It's bringing it back up, and it's moving across the doorway to our security, to the security of the homeland. 4th house being the homeland, fighting for home, issues of technology and power and big hidden forces being involved with Pluto. We're going to talk a lot about Mars's backward journey this week because Andy mentioned levers, and it's going to be hitting levers from November 3rd going backward into October. So it's going to be activating things that were tripwires that were put in place just before the election. I will also address Pallas being up there in the house of politics. Pallas Athena at 14 Capricorn is squaring the moon at 13 Aries. So there's like this feisty fighting. And they're both feminine influences, but the moon in Aries is more like Xena Princess Warrior, or I'm, Wonder Woman, or I'm going to kick your teeth in kind of energy. And the fact that this is in the 12th house, that the moon is in the 12th house, the behind the scenes part of the joint Congress chart, suggests there's already been a lot of fighting and perhaps strategizing going on that we have not seen yet. As the day progresses, the moon is going to move out of the 12th. Right. No, further down into the 12th. We will not. So it's going to continue. I'm completely backwards. So
moon's in Aries all day. So
all day. All right. So
it'll be there for another day and a half. But the other thing that jumps out to me real fast is you've got Mars down here in the 4th house in Cancer, and you've got the moon in Aries. So Mars and the moon are trying to do some dance with each other. And whenever I see a planet that is right on the 4th house side within a couple of degrees of the IC, like Mars is, I always think that that's like a kind of it's an energy that's stuck and wants to break out. And with it being opposite Pluto, I just think there's a lot of contentiousness. We've talked about this. And the Mars energy, the warrior energy, may jump out in unforeseen kinds of ways. You also have a really interesting configuration here with Mercury and Neptune, which would throw us kind of in a 12th house thing, and with Mars, and you've got a square and a trine and a quincunx. So you have this kind of 3, 4, 5 triangle with Mercury, Neptune, and Mars. I just think that this plays out not so much today, but as an ongoing. And to me, this suggests, and for me, astrology is suggestive, not absolute, because that's the only way I know how to do it. To me, this suggests that there are things that may come out over time. That again, we've got a 12th house energy to this. We've got this, I'm trying to break loose, but I'm in the underworld kind of energy with the 4th house Mars. I don't think everything is revealed today. And I still think that there's a tremendous volatility and unsettledness to all of it. But again, the moon and Mars being sort of flipped like this, I think is very interesting as well. I just think it's wild. This chart's wild. So yeah, that's the first impression.
Mars is going to complete that trine Neptune by the weekend. So there's one possible timer for when some things could be coming out. Also, I want to point out, since you brought up Mercury in Sagittarius, Mercury in the sign that has to do with foreign countries in the 8th house, which deals with secrets, other people's money, crimes.
For sure.
And Neptune's in the house of Congress. Sorry, maybe you know what I'm getting at with that. So anyway.
Yeah, I think some things will be said. It's very contentious, this energy, and it's the first quarter moon today as well, while they're in session. If you think back 4 years to this January the 6th, what time did the kind of march start and they started insurrecting? That was later, wasn't it?
It was after 1. It was like 1:35 or something when they breached, or 1:50. It was before 2.
And so to go to what Kathy's saying, the 12th is a place of hidden things, the 8th is a place of hidden things, the 4th is often a place of hidden things, but this is also the root. So I always think of Mars in Cancer down here, especially retrograde, as defending the root kind of thing, defending the basis of security. and so on. So it's so much we could say. And also, I do want to remind everybody that we are at lunar maximum fully on January the 11th. Venus is also at her maximum elongation on January the 10th. This is just wildly heightened energy. Oh, and on the 9th, the moon goes out of bounds again, by the way. So that ready for the full moon. So and Mercury and Mars are both out of bounds as well. So
since you mentioned lunar maximum, the nodes are about to shift signs. And that happens this weekend, right?
January the 11th.
Okay, so when the nodes change signs, that kind of shifts where society is going, where our focus is, and this is in the house of. Currently, with this chart, it's going to like evolve into the North Node moving into Pisces in the House of Congress, and there may be something that happens that affects everybody.
I've got to wonder how they're going to certify if there's 21 certificates of vote missing. It's just because that's what they count. That's what they count, isn't it? Those certificates, right?
Yes.
Maybe they mysteriously show up.
Maybe they do. Maybe they do. We'll see, I guess, today.
I also want to point out that let's look at 13 and 14. Aren't those degrees you've been talking about, Andy? Because Pallas.
Oh, yeah, for sure. In the Cardinals. I mean, so we've got Cancer and Capricorn show up all the time, and Libra and Aries to a lesser degree. But yes, right in that range, seems like everybody has something in that 13 to 16 cardinal kind of window. Doesn't it? Doesn't it seem like that just shows up in everybody's chart someplace? I mean, it's the sun for the US, and it seems like everyone has something there.
It's the ascendant for Musk and all that. So, yeah.
But where I'm heading with this is that Pallas at 14 Capricorn is sextile Saturn at 14 Pisces in the 11th. So that's an opening for something. That's an opening for stability or strategy, or I'm not.
And she's in Saturn's home sign. So there you go. So yeah, so they're in speaking to each other for sure. It's kind of wild. So,
and isn't Jupiter right now on the descendant of the U.S. chart? Is the the ascendant 12 Sag? Is that right?
It is 12 Sag. Yep. And Mercury is on the galactic center. I use all these extra bits, but that's usually kind of something new really coming through. So, it's just wild, these aspects. And I always think of, we could to go back to the first quarter moon, which is a bit later today, but we're feeling it now, or at the start of this. It's going to be at 16 Aries, Capricorn. The first quarter moon was called Crisis in Action by Dane Rudhyar. And I always think when it's in Aries and Capricorn, you got to think of the symbology of the signs. They're both horned animals. These two are very like head-butty signs, right? And Aries rules the head. I think there's going to be a lot of head-butting, to be quite honest. I do take hope, though, that after the first quarter moon, the moon conjuncts Chiron. Asteroid Hygeia is here as well, which is healing, and then Eris. So there's going to be some shakeups, even if it's not what you hope for today.
What do we want? Do we want to put this over the U.S. chart, or do we want to put this over the election chart? What would be the way to proceed?
I was going to put Harris first, just because she's.
Oh yes, she's there. Okay.
Well, she's the one due to certify the vote, right? So, and she said she was going to do her sacred duty.
What does she do if almost?
So, do you want her? Do you want her in the middle? Yeah, her in the middle. Well, that's why I picked the 27 degree mid heaven, and IC in Cancer and Capricorn of the Joint Congress chart was pinging me because that's square her full moon. So if I swap them round the other way, that midheaven IC is square to her sun moon exactly.
So she's in the middle of this, being drawn in multiple directions.
Really in the middle of it.
And
So
Saturn's kind of pounding her too. I mean, Saturn at 14 Pisces is right in her Chiron and in direct opposition to her 13, 15 Virgo of Uranus and Pluto.
I would say Saturn is moving away from her Chiron now. It's a separating aspect. It's been over her Chiron 3 times. And I know it's still close, but it is separating. And that's the ending of a story when the aspect starts to separate. But Saturn takes its time, of course. And Saturn's still got to oppose her Pluto and Venus again yet.
Yeah, but I mean, it's right on it. It's 14 degrees for both.
It's at the same degree, but it's completed the exact aspect. Yeah. For the last time.
So this may be a form of completion for her.
I love that Venus is at the top of her chart.
Venus is up there. And that Mars, okay, we're talking about Mars a lot today. Transiting Mars retrograde, 29 degrees Cancer in her second house of values, talents, abilities, is moving tighter and tighter into a T-square with her Sun-Moon opposition. And it is very soon this week heading back to where it was when she had that gigantic gathering on the ellipse, when she was on Saturday Night Live, when things were really, really heightened, when she was visible, and Saturn will be trining, retrograde Mars will be trining Neptune in her 10th house. Neptune in her 10th, sometimes that could be, almost like a spiritual, having a spiritual impact on people, or being a person with a lot of glamour that's looked up to, that's a beacon of something more than just being herself. I don't know.
And Saturn and Mars again is coming retrograding back to quincunx her natal Saturn again as well. But look where the Sun and Pallas Athena and Mercury are.
In her 7th house of partners and
politics and other people and open enemies and all significant relationships.
And Uranus has for some time been moving back and forth over her Jupiter in the 12th house, Jupiter in Taurus. And this is part of what caused her to raise so incredibly much money so quickly back last year. But also, this is Jupiter in the 12th house is like a cosmic nightlight. And later this week, by the weekend, the Sun in Capricorn is going to be in her 8th house in a trine to her Jupiter and that Uranus. And there could be some startling, shocking plot twist that comes out of nowhere, because that's also when retrograde Mars is going to be in the unbroken flow to Neptune up in the 10th house. Things could change on a dime for her.
Let me move that Mars on, if you like. So Mars trine Neptune. Thank you. So just so
I still think there's a very Saturnian kind of energy here, and I think that this quincunx, of Mars and Cancer to her Saturn, and then while it's going to then T-square her full moon here, I think that's a big deal, and I still think that Saturn being in opposition on her Chiron, in opposition to Pluto and Uranus, she's perhaps feeling a real responsibility to do something. I love Kamala, I love her, and I still maintain she is going to be more important moving forward than she's ever been. But that quincunx to me between Mars and Saturn, I think is significant for whatever reason. I just feel like the Saturn in Aquarius here at 28, because it has that that placement is so important in the US chart and everywhere else. There's tension here, and she's going to find a way. To me, she is a woman who is good at finding common ground as well as standing her ground. I just think it gets wild as can be, but I think that she has a much more calming, soothing, I'm going to make it all better kind of vibe. And I think Saturn sometimes gets a bad rap, but Saturn can also be a very powerful force in trying to help get things in order. And right now, I expect this Congress to be chaos. And I think any kinds of forces, internally or externally, that help put some sort of order to it is going to be incredibly important. And I feel like and Liz Cheney and a lot of people are going to be part of that drive towards stability and normalcy. She's a thing, man. She's a player, and she's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. That is my belief, for sure.
And look at the aspects by the weekend. The nodes, as Kathy already mentioned, the day before. So the exact Mars-Neptune trine is on January the 12th. Before that, we have lunar maximum, and then we're approaching a full moon as well, which is always very heightened. The North Node is approaching Neptune. The two are moving towards each other. They're heading towards a conjunction at 28 Pisces, which is semi-sextile her natal Saturn. And it's just, and on the January the 12th, by the way, Saturn will exactly oppose her Pluto for the third time.
Which could be transformative.
It could be very transformative, especially if she's kind of learned the lessons. The thing about Saturn, like Andy said, Saturn does get a bad rap, but I have a strong Saturn, and I've always been, obviously worked with hundreds of clients. Saturn can be a really time to work hard towards your great work, if you like, and especially when somebody's having it going back and forth, opposing all of this, because Saturn opposed all of this conjunction in her fourth, then went retrograde, now has moved forward again, and is finishing up opposing all of that. It's been over her Chiron 3 times. I remember a really amazing astrologer, Stephen Forrest, when I was going through a really extended Saturn period, saying it is time for your great work. It's time to kind of buckle up and just really stay the course, kind of thing. And know what you were meant for, he said. I wrote a book then, by the way.
But along with that, I want to point out that Saturn started that when she was nominated for the presidency.
Yep.
Because Saturn was exactly opposite her Venus, and Venus was on top of her Venus when the Democratic National Convention met and formally nominated her. So that's tied to this somehow. And we don't know how, but it's whatever's going on now is tied to that time period as well.
Yeah. Anything else you want to quickly look at with her? Shall I just quickly move it to the full moon, and then
I think this is like a call to duty for her. I feel
that's a
like
really good Saturn word.
That she has to step up here, that she recognizes that she has a power and an influence. And I think she takes it seriously. Looking at the motivation is going to drive the way people's behavior. So all the predictions I made about Trump were based on the way I saw his motivation, 8 years ago. And I think that she is driven by trying to do something bigger than her. I really do feel that. So, which is a very noble kind of way to approach things. I just feel like she's going to be drawn into the mix. I think she's going to rise to the occasion. And I think that this is a time where she's being tasked with things, kind of like Liz Cheney too, a little bit, where maybe it's not the most fun, but I think she is built for this time. And I think it's really important that there are these powerful, strong women who are prepared to step up when they're needed. And I think now is kind of the time we need them. So I believe that she will really come to prominence more so than even when she was running for president. I just feel that about her.
She actually used the word sacred duty, by the way, in her, in her Instagram
I mean, that
morning.
just really speaks to that, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah. And, look at this by the 13th on the full moon. Venus is heading up towards Saturn as well in the top of her chart.
And Mars is just about on the moon. So as the moon starts to wane, moon and Mars are going to cross each other.
In the moon's home sign.
Yeah, so that's not going to be oh, well, there it went kind of thing.
No.
And in terms of how this plays out, I mean, yes, it is possible that everything goes sideways and suddenly she's back in the picture for heading into the presidency by the spring. Also, if it doesn't work out that way, she could be the leader of what keeps democracy going and alive. She's not going to just like go sit with a think tank.
No, and I don't think she's gonna go and run for governor of California either.
I don't either. This is something bigger.
Yeah. So should I put the USA chart in the middle?
Sure. And I'll explain why you're
Andy, is that your head mic or headset? There's some real noise in the background. It's not me.
It probably is. I'm like, again, the low tech. This is why I never did podcasts for 8 years. So we'll try that.
Maybe if you could try and hold it away from your clothes a little bit, because
we'll try this. Is that better?
It is when you pull it away. Yeah.
And to clarify why I say March or April, because I've had comments saying, "Oh my God, are you saying there's not going to be a disclosure till then?" No, we're talking about the movement of Mars. It's currently retrograde. It's going to go direct in towards the end of February, and then it's going to be retracing its steps. So right now, it's triggering things from the election, right before the election, the weekend before the election, the weeks before the election, and then when it goes direct, it's going to hit all those things again. So one conceivable scenario here. Do you have music on? Is that it?
I think it's his mic. I think it's Andy's mic.
Anyway, the one possible scenario here is that it takes until Mars goes across these points again to completely sort out what happened last fall.
Yeah. And some of the others that, planets, because there's a lot involved in this unfolding story. Maybe it's just what I tell you guys, all my mic issues and things. I said yesterday to some other astrologers that all this crazy energy is a bit like Mercury retrograde on steroids in some ways for tech issues. I've been having so many tech issues, but anyway, so I don't know what the noise is. If it's not Andy's mic, it's anyway. Maybe it's just disturbance in the force, shall we say? Okay, so we have the USA's chart now around the outside, and the chart for the seating of the joint session of Congress beginning at 1 p.m., which is when it's due to gavel, and they're usually pretty on time, right? So as Andy rightly mentioned, Jupiter is right on the descendant of the USA chart. The nodes have passed over the midheaven and IC and have moved into the 3rd and 9th houses, where they will transit for the next 18 months and beyond using the house system I do. Oh, that noise is so annoying. I don't know what to do.
Could it possibly be your mic? Can you hold it out?
I've got it held out. I'm holding it out. It's not mine. I don't. It made a noise when you spoke, and then at the end of when I spoke, I don't know what it is. It's not my mic.
Okay. I will point out that Pallas in the first house is at 14 Capricorn squaring the US Saturn in the 10th. So there's something about a challenge to the rules, to the law, but also who is the leader. And the moon is opposite that. The moon is opposite the US Saturn, and Saturn transiting is in an adjustment aspect to the US Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is it mine? I didn't do anything.
I really do not know what it is.
Okay.
It's when we talk.
Yeah, it's when we talk.
Sorry, guys. We honestly, the energy is so weird today, so I don't know how we. I'm recording.
Okay, so
Let me.
is it worse?
Say something, Andy.
No.
Hi. Happy 2025.
It's not you.
I'm so
Okay.
happy. So happy.
We have no idea what it is, honestly.
So there's a T-square to the US. Actually, there's a grand cross. We've got Saturn at 14 Libra in the 10th, squaring the US sun at 13 degrees, and then squaring the moon at 13 Aries, and then squaring Pallas Athena at 14 Capricorn. So there's a standoff involving
Opposing.
masculine and feminine. Oh, I was taking the squares in a reverse circle.
Yeah, I was just trying to put the lines on. Yeah, but it's forming basically.
Excuse me, a square off between masculine and feminine. There can be no greater metaphor for what's happening, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I mean, really, it's just a cardinal grand cross for hitting the USA's chart by transit. It's wow. Sorry, guys. Really do not know what that noise is. It seems to be when all of us talk, so, and it wasn't there at the start.
I'm an old man. I don't hear it.
Could you put it on pause for a second?
Sure.
So I wonder.
Okay, guys, hopefully the noise is gone. We actually went out and came back in, and we'll splice the two recordings. So we'll just keep going where we were, and hopefully that noise doesn't start again, because it wasn't there at the beginning. It's so weird. Anyway, so this is the chart we were looking at, and I'm kind of a little bit like all over the place now. Kathy just pointed out some valuable things that, you know, Pallas Athena and the sun and the moon transiting first quarter moon are basically making a cardinal grand cross to the sun for the USA and Saturn in the USA chart as well. And that's initiating change, but it's tense. A cardinal grand cross is really tense. This first quarter moon today seems really tense to me, to be quite honest.
Well, isn't a grand cross a bit immobilizing, at least at first, until the moon moves out of it?
It can be, yeah. It can be a bit of a stuck. It's not as bad with cardinal signs as with fixed signs, but yes, it can be a bit immobilizing. It's kind of at loggerheads, to go to a word I used before. You know, I think this could be flipping interesting to watch this joint session of Congress, which I will have in the background because I've got a lot of work to do. But
what does everybody make of the fact that the nodes have just moved across the midheaven and the IC?
Well, I always think when the nodes by transit, in my experience, after they've perfected the degree, the chart in question being transited has kind of learned the lesson of the nodes, and now is time to work on integrating it. So, you know, the public visibility of the USA as Libra, as this country of equality and balance and harmony, that's not quite turned out quite true, has it? So I've long said that the universe has been telling the USA that they've not lived up to the potential promise of the founding fathers, and they need to kind of re-look at everything.
And I would agree with that 100%. To me, it's like, Aries and Libra is about being, showing who you are, where Pisces and Virgo is like, well, maybe you should sit in the corner and think about what you did. I mean, it has that kind of vibe to me. And I still think that so much of what's happening is really about how the United States presents itself on the world stage and how that's received. And the reciprocity between the way that people look at the United States is going to have a gigantic impact on how we can operate moving forward. I think that moving into Pisces Virgo from Aries Libra is a big thing myself. And I would expect this to be, for the United States, especially being so close up here to the Midhaven, is really, you need to sit down and think about what you're doing. Is this really what you want to do long term? This is a pattern is a pattern is a lesson. Well, there's a pattern here. Does somebody learn from it and somebody do something about it? I think it's a wake-up call, an alarm clock. And I actually do think, I'm still optimistic that somebody's going to wake up to that and we're going to try to put things back in order.
Now,
I think this is a big deal.
I feel the shift from Aries and Libra to Pisces and Virgo is the biggest shift, because it's the first and
I do too.
With North Node, it's the first to the last sign, and they're so very different. And I always see the Pisces as being very much about kind of that chaos of creation and also confusion, but it's kind of like a rebirthing in some ways. But also, just to say, the nodes would have been in Pisces and Virgo about 19 years ago too, but the rest of the chart was different as well. And at this point in history, we have all these outer planets changing signs. We have so much, everything is extra. But we could get a little bit of a glimpse. I haven't looked back yet at that time for the USA itself, but I always see things as cyclical and building. But I think it has been a wake-up call, and it's been kind of building to this. We've had the Pluto return, then we also had a Neptune opposition to the USA chart, then we had the Chiron return, which is not yet completed. We've got the last pass of the Chiron return for the USA. Then we had Mars stationing on the North Node. This is peak reckoning time for the USA. I've long thought that. So.
Yeah, 19 years ago would tie into right at the beginning of the housing reversal and the bank bailouts and all that. So that was the cracks were starting to appear in 2006. I mean, that's when I started talking about it, and other people, were starting to see it too. I think that that's the foundational point where a lot of the banking issues, and those issues have been pervasive all this time, started, and how that impacts, liquidity, quantitative easing, how those things impacted the average person's day-to-day lifestyle. We could build a really strong case that 19 years ago was when that really kicked off in a more hardcore way, based on banking and real estate and those transactions at that point in time.
And just to say, Pluto in February 2027 will start being conjunct the South Node of the USA. So we've got another thing to come. But anyway, Cassie, go on.
Well, leading off of what Andy just said about the banks, Mars is traveling through the axis that does deal with money and resources. And as it continues moving back in Cancer, this week it's going to oppose the US Pluto at 27 Capricorn in the second house. So there's something that will be challenging or attacking structures, institutions. I'm not sure how this is going to play out. It did that once before. It opposed that in October, when who knows what was going on that we didn't see that had to do with other people's money and big things happening behind the scenes. That may have been about when Elon started offering the lottery in Pennsylvania to people, and there was the betting going on on the Polymarket platform based in France. Meanwhile,
Well, and Elmo funding Donald Trump basically as well.
right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's with that. But we also had the other candidate with her list of, here's how I'm going to support small businesses. This is what I'm doing. Bam, 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 to better everyone's money. So it's like the money of a few as opposed to the economy as a whole. So something with that could be coming back this week. And then it gets settled, or it hits the point it's going to be later in the spring.
Yeah. Yeah.
When Mars makes its third pass.
Yeah, and of course Jupiter's going to station direct and cross the descendant yet again. Mars is going to station direct.
Mars is going to move across the US Mercury this weekend also.
As well, yeah. So let me actually get it to that. So, and we can kind of look at the progression of so conjunct radix. Oh, actually, it's not till 21st, but still it's getting closer.
Okay, it's getting closer and closer.
Yeah, and all that story's starting to unfold. And look at that when Pluto and the Sun conjunct. Okay.
I always thought that opposition was really significant. They're the only two retrograde planets, and they're almost exactly opposite, between Pluto at 27 Capricorn and retrograde Mercury at 24 Cancer. And so much of that relates to prosperity and how you present yourself. Like Trump is like the embodiment of trying to create a certain kind of facade about his prosperity and his wealth. The United States is a big, rich country. And I think that those things will be challenged, much as Russia's hype about its power is being, I think, challenged by reality. Is that going to happen to the United States? I just think that it's just crazy train and gets crazier. But so much of this hitting Pluto, I think, is really powerful. And again, kind of a wake-up call as to, is this the way we really want to do things moving forward? Is this a successful strategy moving forward? I would expect a lot of pushback from a lot of different pockets over the next year. I no matter what happens with Trump, I just don't think it's all smooth sailing. And I think there is a resistance that will take place that will have an impact for sure.
And well, notice, I know people wish it would just be over today and like they'll come out and go, whatever. We long said that it might happen, like the story might not complete and he might be inaugurated. But I wouldn't get into doom and gloom realm if it is, because I don't think it's going to last personally, like that,
Look at this chart. The day after the inauguration is scheduled, and we're not convinced it's going to happen on that day. Pallas Athena at 24 Aries is exactly opposite. The moon at 24 Libra, both of which are squaring Mars on top, exactly squaring Mars on top of the US Mercury. So that's a really, really tight T-square.
Oh, Eris. Eris, you mean? Sorry.
Oh, it's Eris. Excuse me. It's Eris. Oh, that's even better.
It is, yeah. The SHIT stirrer, as I call her, or table shaker. Yeah.
And it makes a grand cross with this opposition of Pluto and Mercury, too.
It does. It does.
And it does to Kamala's chart as well.
Yep. And Mercury is moving pretty fast at the moment on its way to conjunct that Pluto. So joining that party as well. And Pallas Athena is here too, so in the second house. They're both coming up to oppose that Mercury of the USA as well. And Pluto and the Sun are conjunct again, because the inauguration, if it happens, always begins as the Sun moves into Aquarius, by the way. And so this is in a trine unbroken flow, as Kathy calls it, to the midheaven of the USA. There. And anybody notice there's no noise now? So it was definitely in the ethers. This was not on any of us.
Yeah, right. There are, should we put use the joint session as a transit chart to the last Mars-Pluto opposition, or to election day?
We can do both. We can.
I mean, they're pretty close in what
they are. I'll start with that Mars Pluto opposition, and so
the one before that. There we go. Okay, so as I said, retrograde Mars is now where Mars was at that opposition. So
and it's not quite exact. So it would have kind of happened, you know, even closer to the election, that Mars. Well, you know what I mean.
Got me. Yeah.
Yeah, he's moving back. Not quite there yet. So as well. So I can get that exact in a minute if you like. And then Mercury was at 27 Sag today, is at 27 Sag today, and square to the Neptune that was there then and is back there again. That's another revisiting. Neptune had also kind of been a little bit back from this degree that it's at now, if that makes sense. Sorry, I'm a bit blur today. Yeah. Anyway, I can move Mars to be exactly at that point, if you like.
Well, it seems to me that the two important things to take away from this is that today's event is revisiting whatever the attack was on our systems right before the election, and it's also it's stirring the Mercury Neptune square, which could have been disinformation. It could have been something happening behind the scenes, changing information. So that would fit with there having been manipulation of vote tallies. It would also fit with messaging that just completely obscures what's going on. And so now it's coming back around again.
Can I flip them around and bring Mars back to when it gets back to that 29-degree mark again? Does that work for you?
Oh, yeah, please.
Oh, conjunct. Sorry. April again. So Mars will, once he's moved direct, so we've got the joint Congress chart here in the middle. When Mars comes right back again and reaches where he is today, it will be April the 17th. So that's got that energy of the story unfolding as well. The North Node is on Neptune by then, and in the 11th house. And, you know, Congress, basically.
Yeah, Congress is packed at that point.
Yes.
The house that represents Congress is packed at that point.
The 11th house, yeah. Absolutely is. Yeah. And just a little bit later that day, the moon comes up and hits that Mercury.
Right. And Mars is going to be square the sun.
Oh, yes. Oh, wow.
Yep. So
Mhm.
whatever is happening, as much as many of us wish this would just resolve itself in a particular way, it's an ongoing issue, discussion, whatever,
Mm.
for
I,
months.
I still think there could be some contention today, though. And we talked about it briefly earlier before we recorded that, you know, obviously people were disappointed that Johnson got elected. But what happened to those two people that flipped their votes, you know, when they were kind of taken off into pretty much a cupboard and got Trump on the phone and things? I wouldn't be surprised if there's threats going on. And we might not see it, you know, it might not be fighting on the floor like you think.
Well, the
It's
moon's in the 12th house when it
yeah,
starts.
yeah.
So there could be backroom fights going on.
Mm-hmm.
There will be backroom negotiations going on.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you would
Mm-hmm.
think this should be straightforward, open the envelope, count. Somehow it isn't.
No. Andy, any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, just the deal making behind the scenes. I mean, I always thought it was interesting that the dude that was here to root out corruption was the most corrupt dude I'd ever seen as a politician with Trump. And I think the idea of transparency, this is the most backroom dealing, you know, under the table kinds of maneuverings imaginable. I Nothing really is as it appears. I mean, it goes back to really distorting truth as a strategy. Truth is in our way, so we'll create a truth we like better. Um, so you really can't go by appearances. That's why I think it's important, from my perspective, to not look so much at the overt event, but at the trends that are propelling things forward. And if you put in effort, it will do something. It will pay off at some point. Um, Again, I guess my latest pet, you know, phrase, "Honey Boo Boo goes to Congress." I just think it's a wild child. It's not as it appears. No one's really focused on moving forward. They're very driven by self-interest. And so when you have a lot of people who have self-interest as their motivator, it's not so easy to do things collectively as a group and be effective. Uh, don't be surprised if there's not a lot of weird one-offs in all directions. And I would think that this is a very contentious, again, hair-pulling, hillbilly throwdown kind of world that is not the way that the founding fathers envisioned it. Shit about to get real, as the old saying goes. And I think it gets less real the more real it gets. So, yeah.
Before we leave, I'd love to just say that remember, it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. You've got to play your part. You know, make your voice heard. Write to
for sure
your Congress people. You know, or do something locally, or you know, don't just sit back and go, why aren't they doing something? I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit fed up. Hope they do something. You know, it's like in Georgia, the country, they wrote, the people like really rose up, and I think there's a tendency here to just go, they'll do it.
If there's not a resisting force and people are determined to do things for their own self-interest and no one's stopping them, why do they voluntarily stop? Ask yourself that question.
And I feel that we're trying to do that here. But anyway,
for sure.
Cassie, last words.
Well,
they're counting the votes, by the way. Now the tally.
They're counting the votes. Okay.
Yeah.
I encourage people not to attach to any one event. We're not at January 20th yet, This next weekend could be insane. We have consistently said it may not play out the way you think. So if Biden does have 2 addresses to the nation scheduled, but if your vision is, oh, he's going to just announce we have all this evidence of election interference, that may not be what happens. We have consistently said other countries have a huge stake in what is going on. Andy has consistently said something's going to circle back around and bite you know who on the you know where. And it's definitely easier to stop it before he gets in there. And I'm going to end with this. Andy, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you feel the energy? What is your energy about the inauguration? What is your energy that you're feeling about Trump? You feel nothing, right? It's not there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Trump is sort of off in his own world, playing golf and trying to have parties. There's no real consistent movement that I can see towards a transition. I mean, it's like a hard stop and then what? Normally there's a transition phase, there is a handoff phase, but this is, I mean, Trump's energy to me is fading real quickly. In 2016, I believed that he would win. And at the end, you could see his aura sort of expanding and Hillary's contracting. And he also matched the US chart better than Hillary. But right now, his energy is really shrinking. He's sort of melting before our eyes, in my opinion. So I think that his energy is not, he's not the powerhouse to me that he portrays himself to be. That could be a function of age. It could be a function of a lot of energy that's pushing against him that we can't see yet. I still think it turns out less destructive than the worst case scenario might lead us to believe. I don't think we replicate, Orban or we replicate Putin. I just don't see that. So regardless of what happens in 2 weeks, I still feel that the power dynamic, it's not a slam dunk for Trump, in my opinion. I don't think the energy is supportive of Trump. I still maintain that the collective energy of the United States is in contravention of where Trump is. And I still think that matters. And I think the collective action and the collective thought of people within the United States will serve as a pushback to at least slow this down. And I think that I still believe, because I say it doesn't make it true, that speech, but I still believe that external forces, especially from NATO, may circle back to have an impact on the way in which we view Trump, we view his allegiances, and we view the election. And there are still forces in place, the United States military being the most obvious. The United States is a big, powerful country. It didn't get like this without safeguards in place, risk mitigation vehicles in place. I think a lot of those things still come into play. There are sane, rational people at points within the government. And I think that those safeguards may be kind of dented and scratched a bit, but I think they still exist. So that's what I think.
I don't think the energy's behind Vance either, before anybody comments on that. So,
Nope.
Nor do I.
Has anyone seen him? No, he has no energy right now. None.
no. So I think we'll leave it at that and go and watch these votes tallied and get this out to you. We'll probably know what happened by the time we manage to get this uploaded and spliced, because it's in 2 parts. But we'll be back Friday to look at more. And then after the projected date of the inauguration, we'll probably move back to once a week, because we're all really busy. So my last word is always do your self-care. Look after you. Don't get down in the dumps and obsessed with like we're doomed, because I don't think we are. Anyway.
Nope.
Kathy, last word.
Got a bumpy ride for a few weeks. When March comes around, we're going to feel a whole lot better about a whole bunch of things.
We are. Yep. All right, everybody. Till next time. Peace out.